Garrett Qualey, author of Botanical Shakespeare, and Ohio gozaimasu. I was thinking that I always say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we're having Hannah Sylvester. I see her on the District Herbalist from Lincoln in Lincolnshire in the UK. So I always try to cover the time zones. But Ohio gozaimasu is what the Japanese say whenever you start work. It means good morning, but if you start work at midnight, you could still say Ohio gozaimasu. So I'm sort of thinking we should just do that. And we're totally justified in saying that because Sumie Hasegawa, the amazing illustrator of Botanical Shakespeare, is Japanese. So there you go. We have a validity, an added validity to saying it. So hello, and this is, I've been putting this off, but also looking forward to this forever. This is our sleep episode, if you will, of Shakespeare therapy and herbal healing. I've made an executive decision about that word. We're going to go with the British pronunciation of herbal rather than herbal, because I keep saying herbal healing when I do it the American way. So there we go. So just a couple things I wanted to tell you about before we bring in Hannah and talk about sleep. One of the reasons that I'm a little sweaty is because I did not get a lot of sleep last night, and this is often the case. Slightly justified because I was driving from New York to DC, where I am now. You can see the little, where is it? Washington Monument, right there. And when you don't get enough sleep, one of the things you can do is go outside and just get your feet in the dirt and ground. It's called grounding. And I hugged a tree, and I was thinking, oh, people think, oh, it's so 70s and dumb. But I was thinking there's a lot of dumb things people are doing right now. And on the scale of dumbness, hugging a tree, it's really not that high. And it makes you feel better. And if you don't get enough sleep, getting your feet in the ground, touching nature actually can make you feel better, more bright, more awake. I don't know why. Maybe Hannah will know. The other thing I wanted to say, is that Botanical Shakespeare, or Beauchax as we like to call it, is a Kindle Book of the Month this month. So you can get it for cheap, or what I'm supposed to say is a bargain, but you can get it for cheap right now. And the other thing that I wanted to say, particularly since I brought up Sumie, is one of the reasons that the book was important to me is because I was so entranced by her drawings. I was brought in, she had already done most of them. And you can recognize the Shakespeare plants in the wild, which means at the farmer's market as well. So yesterday I was at the farmer's market, and look at those. Those are currants, and they've got, the little tiny, I don't know how much you can see, the little tiny lines in them. And of course, there's Sumie's currants, and it's right next to thyme or senna, which is what we were talking about last week, about purging or detoxing. Anyway, not only did I get those, but they had the white currants. You could, they're going all over my computer. Really, really beautiful, really beautiful. And so you want to be, a lot of times with the Shakespeare plants especially, or anything, you see the woodcuts, the old woodcuts, and they're very static and sometimes hard to recognize what plant they are. And so these you can go, oh my God, that's the plant from Winter's Tale. Or if you watch enough of these, you'll be able to do that. So anyway, and these are radishes, and I was thinking about, there's funny lines about Falstaff says, I'm a forked radish, which you have to say carefully. And also, I'm a bunch of radish, which I love both of those lines. And these are not the perfect round red radishes that you usually see. And I was wondering why we've gotten into this thing about perfect looking food. And who's deciding what's perfect looking? Anyway, so I don't know, something to ponder. But there's a bunch of radish. And then the other exciting find was gooseberries. These are not the green gooseberries that are generally mentioned in Shakespeare or that you usually see, but they're just gorgeous. And then finally, I was telling you on my my fruit finds. Sour cherries. They got a little, I did put them in the fridge, but they almost look translucent. Look at that. Just, isn't that beautiful? It's beautiful. And that, of course, has a great line about friendship. Helena and Hermia in Midsummer Night's Dream. When I see double cherries, I always think of friendship. So and the other thing, the line of the day for sleep is sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care. One of the other things that I wanted to say about learning the line, which I'm sure you've already memorized by now, sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care. Carl Reiner, that comic genius, Carl Reiner, just died. And I used to love the Dick Van Dyke Show, and his son, Rob Reiner, directed The Princess Bride, which is just brilliant. And he's been on many shows and directed them and been involved in them in some way or another. And they had a little segment that he had done for PBS. And he talked about when he was young, he decided to go to his friend, pulled him to go to this acting school. And the first thing the woman did was have them memorize the Gertrude speech from Hamlet. He memorized it, and here he was, like all these decades and decades later, he rattled it off. And that's the thing, because not only do you remember it, when you commit it to memory, you remember it forever. One of the reasons I want to do this is because I heard some people butcher the line. One was in the news, sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care. It's so evocative, it's easy to remember. And don't you feel like an unraveled sleeve when you're tired? And I think a lot of us, there's been a lot of stuff in the news about people being tired and not sleeping well during how we're all handling the pandemic and all the fallout from that. I certainly am not sleeping well. I don't feel particularly anxious, but I'm just not sleeping. And it's always been something that I felt like, it wasn't a high priority, but it does, learning through all these articles gives the brain a chance to rest and recharge. I'm sure Hannah can talk about all the good things that sleep does for us. And one of the things that I tried to make it more interesting for myself if I went to sleep is to record the dreams. And of course, Shakespeare has lots and lots about dreams. And we could talk about that at another time, but certainly that's part and parcel of sleep and the insights that you can get from them. His Queen Mab's speech, Mercutio says dreamers often lie, and maybe they do, but I think there's some truth in some dreams too. You never know. It's certainly entertainment while you're sleeping. So with all of that said, let's bring on Hannah.
Okay, we are outsmarting technology today because Instagram wouldn't let Hannah Sylvester, the district herbalist, on. So we have switched to Zoom, and we are going to continue our chat about sleep. And then we're going to go to sleep because this has been exhausting. But anyway, okay. So Hannah, tell us the herbs that we were going to talk about as far as helping us sleep. And yes, this is personal.
Sure. Okay. Right. Well, we were going to talk about 3 herbs to do with sleep. So we're talking about lavender and poppy and lettuce, but not the lettuce that you might be thinking of.
Okay. Well, so the lettuce that's in Shakespeare, at least to me as drawing, is not also the lettuce that you would normally think that you would pick up in your local grocery store, or Whole Foods, or farmer's market. So we'll see about that. Lavender, I started off talking about, and also poppy. Okay, here's a line that's not in Shakespeare. Poppies will make them sleep. And yes, that is from The Wizard of Oz. So that was one of the ones. But the line from that is not poppy, nor mandragora, nor all the sleepy syrups of the world. So Shakespeare talks about it in a sleeping way. Okay, Hannah, start off. Can we start with poppy? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, poppy, there are lots of different types of poppy. There's obviously the very dangerous opium poppy, which is absolutely not for human consumption. But the type of poppy that you can use is the field poppy, which is that really lovely red poppy that you might see in certain countryside areas.
We saw them outside Harlexton growing
mm,
in wheat fields last summer. Is that the kind of poppy that you're talking about?
yeah, absolutely. You'll see them growing along field edges in fields out in the open countryside. They're very sort of classic, sort of kind of springtime, summery sort of poppy, really, that really lovely red colour.
Beautiful.
And the whole theme about the whole poppy family, really, because poppy family is quite a big family, is that they're all somniferous. I love the word somniferous.
I know, it's good.
So they all have very, very sleepy, very calming. They're all very, and this is the real clincher with the sleepy ones, is that they're very cooling as well.
Mm.
So with
we talked about cooling last week, but what do you do with them to get those benefits?
So with the poppy itself, the way that it's used is it's the upper parts that are used, so the flower that's used, and you can infuse it in tea. There is another very close relation to, which certainly won't have been in Shakespeare, but the California poppy, which is actually a type of poppy that's very well tolerated by children. That has a really gorgeous, really vibrant orange colour to it. And again, that follows the same kind of sleepy, sedative, calming, soothing, and again, cooling nature that all poppy have.
Great. Okay. And so then moving from poppy to, let's go to lavender, because we did discuss that a little bit before. So
yeah, so lavender, like most of the mints, really, lavender is really very cooling. So from what you were saying a little bit earlier on Instagram about that sort of the heat and the not being able to sleep, that's where lavender can come in to play really, really nicely. And it's classed as a nervine, so something that's very nourishing for the nervous system.
okay.
But it's something, I think we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, in the sense that it's quite potent. And you know, when you smell lavender, most people have an association of lavender of they either don't mind it or they really hate it. And people who really don't get on with it, and maybe the type of people who might find it a little bit too stimulating. But for the general purposes, usually most people find it really cooling and really sedative. And with the lavender, it's those gorgeous, lovely purple flowers that are the medicinal part.
So we've got two things where the flower is the good part, not only to look at, but also to help heal. It's interesting that these things that you brought up are cooling, and they do say that it's better to sleep in a cool room. And yet we think of summer as hot and sleepy. Certainly it's harder to be rushing around when you're incredibly hot. So I'm trying to figure out how all these things work together. Like, you're too hot to do anything but sleep, and yet you should be sleeping in a cool environment.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing about summer is the fact that, you know, it's longer days generally. So you know, maybe we need less sleep in the summer than we do during the winter months. But it's certainly by sort of trying to drop our body temperature a little bit before bed in a number of ways. So by slowing down our physical activity before we go to sleep, and making sure that we've got, if we haven't got a cool room, then certainly cool things like cotton sheets can help to reduce the temperature at night. And going for more cooling food, so even something like, you know, eating a bit of cucumber before bed. Cucumber's really cooling, so that can actually help take your body temperature essentially. So lots of little things that you can bring in just to take things down a notch, and just to try and get your body into that state of being ready for sleep, which is difficult in the summer.
Cool, calm, and collected, people say all the time. So that makes a lot of sense. And so what about lettuce? Lettuce is going to be a surprise for some people. A lot of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, normal sort of like salad lettuce is pretty cooling in itself.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you did want to munch on a leaf of lettuce before bed, that would be okay. But it's not particularly sleepy. So the type of lettuce that is sleepy is a particular one called wild lettuce. And this has a Latin name of Lactuca virosa. Now, Lactuca virosa is part of the poppy family, and it's a really curious plant because it really likes growing in quite difficult areas. So where you'll see it come up the sides of buildings, on sort of, on normal urban streets. You'll see it grow on wastelands. And it's a very, very tall, grows really quite tall. And it has sort of quite distinct leaves. But the thing that makes the lettuce really, really stand out is the fact that it's extremely prickly. And when you try and pick it, if you're picking it without gloves, you have to be really careful not to prick yourself and actually draw a little bit of blood. But inside the plant is this curious milky sap. And it's that milky sap that it's the whole upper part of the plant that's used medicinally rather than just the flower. But it's that milky sap that has those really kind of sedating purposes. And it is supremely cooling. So for people that are very cool, this is one to go the other way and to completely avoid. And it also has a curious action, as some of the sedative herbs do, that it's an anaphrodisiac, so it reduces, libido.
Oh, so it's the opposite of it. Aphrodisiac. Okay. And so you can just pick it on the side, but it will. Yeah, I was going to ask you where else it would grow. Okay, so if you want to lower the libido, lower your temperature, and get some sleep. Hi, honey, I have a headache. Here's some lettuce.
Oh, actually, I was going to mention about it as well, so I'm not completely forgot. It's actually the lettuce that Peter Rabbit from the Beatrix Potter stories. It's the wild lettuce that Peter Rabbit is meant to have fallen asleep under.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So in this episode, you have gotten not only Shakespeare, sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care, but you've gotten the Wizard of Oz and Peter Rabbit. So we've covered everything. I hope you get some sleep between now and next week, and rest well. Thank you, Hannah. We've outsmarted the technology. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.